Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Aircall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. We've got Jeff Isaac in studio. He hosts the Saturday All Request show. I'm going to get what era he wants to time travel to after he gets things set up here. Mom's in studio. And then we have our first guest, Clay Kregel of Encore Business Group. We work together and do memorabilia together, so we're going to talk some memorabilia, but he's also a big sports fan, knowledgeable sports fan. He's got his Michigan gear on, so we'll have to talk some Michigan because they've been playing really well. But Jeff, I'll start with you. Do you have a time that you would like to travel to? Time, place, era? It's an open board here.
It's definitely the 1960s.
Okay, and
Yes.
then what would you want to be doing in the 60s? Seeing like the music in that era?
The music,
Okay,
the cars. Yep.
okay,
Absolutely.
that's a good answer. We'll pull Clay in here. He's sitting in with us. I don't know if he has what would be your time. You're kind of like a modern day guy. I don't know historically where you would like to go.
Yeah, I don't really know. By the way, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go to like some significant sporting event.
That's what I was thinking.
My brain just goes to like, I don't know, Babe Ruth.
That's a good one.
Just to see, how his level of baseball compares to what it is now. Yeah, I don't know. Off the top of my head, that's probably where I would go to start.
You want to scout how he looks compared to Shohei Ohtani, since they get compared a lot.
Exactly,
You could see
yes.
like a game of Shohei and then go back and see Babe Ruth play against
Babe Ruth
plumbers or whatever.
hit a home run off like the guy that sold him his house
Yeah.
a couple years before.
Yeah.
So
That's part of the deal.
Exactly.
That's actually written into the deal, I think. Yeah, that's a good one. I was a little worried that you were going to choose something that was before your lifetime, but in my lifetime. I was worried that you were going to be like, well, I'd like to see the Pistons win, the Bad Boys win the championship in 89 and 90, and that was when I was alive.
See, I thought Babe Ruth was part of your life, but
not
maybe a little before.
Missed him by a couple years here, but that is a good one. Well, you guys were talking baseball before we got started here. Clay's real knowledgeable about baseball, and Jeff was coming in talking about the new signing, but I wanted to talk to you guys about that because we were talking about the strategy and how it's a little different nowadays. We're used to the older Ilitch, well, owning multiple teams, but he was always willing to spend, and he spent. I mean, I think at one time they were like the second biggest payroll when they were in the World Series era. They were up there with the Yankees, even though they weren't really viewed as a Yankees level payroll. With the younger Ilitch, it's not quite that much, but I'm curious to get your guys' take on, because you were talking about kind of the dichotomy between how much of this is Scott Harris and how much of this is Ilitch. Like, how much is he being restricted, he being Scott Harris being restricted to spend, or is it just Scott Harris kind of trying to be the smartest guy in the room? Because I thought you guys had some interesting takes on that. What do you think, Jeff?
I really like Scott Harris, and I love the fact that we have a young team, and they're so exciting to watch. But again, you've got to have cornerstone pieces. We don't have a everyday third baseman. Who are we going to go get? Are we going to spend? Who's out there? I don't really want Bregman. I think Bregman's too old, and he's going to want too much money. But it's and this whole Skubal thing, I don't think he's going to do less than 10 years, and I wouldn't give him 10 years. I would not. I would go, the most I would do is 6 or 7 years. But to do a 10-year deal, now you're getting into that Miguel Cabrera contract where, the last 4 years of his career here was just awful with the injuries and playing on one leg. And so it's really tough. But I do like Scott Harris and what he's done with bringing these kids along and getting that, when we were younger, in talking about, the old Ilitch, our minor league system was completely depleted. We had no So it's good to see that it's filled and they got these young guys, but you've got to have pieces around to get us over the top.
That's the next step here. I'm with you on the Skubal thing. I actually made the same comparison on last week's show, talking about Cabrera and Skubal, and I think Clay's with me on this because we've talked about this. But I'm in the camp. I know it's not necessarily popular. I know people want to try to hang on to Skubal, but between the amount that you'd have to pay him and him going for a record-setting contract, maybe both in years and in total amount in per year and all of that for a pitcher, these high dollar amounts have not worked out for the pitchers. They haven't necessarily worked out for the hitters. These big contracts aren't working out as a whole, but I think you're with me, Clay, that you'd like to see them get some assets for him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think right now, I don't know if there's a higher value on Tarek Skubal right now. Especially we saw this past season, Skubal had yet another dominant season, and the Tigers, they got to the ALDS and they got to a Game 5, but really the Mariners were a class above them when they played. So I think the value of what they can get back, you look at the Mets, you look at the proposed trades with them, getting a guy like a Jonah Tong would be great. Jet Williams would be awesome. There's a lot of holes in the Tigers' major league roster right now. There's a lot of room to grow for the guys that are part of the core, the Torkelsons, the Greens, the Dinglers. But there are some spots, as you mentioned earlier, the third base is an issue. There's center field. We don't really know what we have in Parker Meadows. There's the bullpen issue. So I think right now, if you can get the top value of what you can for Skubal, maybe spend that money elsewhere, I think that's the best path forward for the Tigers.
Then hopefully consolidate some of those pieces because they have a lot of up-and-coming guys. I mean, you mentioned center field. You've got Max Clark kind of looming. I know he's not necessarily knocking on the door, but he'll be up soon enough. Those guys have been, him and McGonigal have been, jetting through the minor leagues here. And yeah, when you can get a guy when you can get a package where you have a starter for Skubal, likely a starter, like you said, rotation starter, and then other young pieces, it's hard not to cash in because you just can't be left with nothing for him. That's the one thing that can't happen is he ends up signing with the Yankees for a record-setting contract, and then you're left holding the bag, and you just get the compensatory stuff from him signing elsewhere. So now Jeff came in talking about this Drew Anderson. It sounded like, Clay, you knew a little bit about him. So what's the history on him here?
Yeah,
that they just signed.
When I saw that they signed him, I didn't know much about him, but just looking into it more, he's a guy that was with the Tigers a couple seasons back in the organization, left, and actually looks like he had some pretty good seasons in Korea in the KBO. It's a classic Scott Harris move in that it's a guy that he thinks he can sign for fairly cheap, 1 year, $7 million deal with a $10 million team option for the second year. So if this does hit, a $10 million deal for next year is a really good value for the Tigers. But just another one of those Scott Harris moves where he signs him cheap and hopes he can hit. We've seen that with Kenta Maeda. We saw it with Alex Cobb. We've seen, acquisitions at the trade deadline last year, just low risk acquisitions, and we haven't necessarily seen them work out for the Tigers. So hoping that this is a change for the Tigers and that Anderson can either be a good solid back of the rotation guy or maybe a middle relief type pitcher for them.
I'm hoping that the fact that he was in the organization is a good sign that they wanted to get him back. Maybe saw something from him earlier that they wanted to get him. But yeah, they do go kind of bargain shopping. So hopefully they make a swing or two here in the off season. Like Jeff said, we got the winter meetings coming up, and we'll probably try to have Brandon Day or someone else on the show here to talk some Tigers with and get some updates from. But I got to have you guys indulge me. Clay's got Michigan gear on, but we were talking about Indiana here a little bit. And Jeff, it's still a little surreal to me. I've been an Indiana fan since I went there in the early 2000s. My first year was Antoine Randall's senior year. Very good year as far as like individual performances, but it wasn't exactly a good, they still didn't even have a winning record. But I don't know what to do being the number one team. I feel like John C. Reilly and Step Brothers, where I go, I don't know what to do with my hands here. I'm not sure what to do with this and the fact that they're the number one seed here.
It's to me, it's outstanding. I've always rooted for the underdog, and I think it's fantastic. I love it, and especially beating Ohio State the way they did. I would say just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, and maybe, hopefully, they get to the national. I'd like to see them in the national championship game. That would be great.
Even though Alabama is kind of the unanimous team that people are saying shouldn't be in there, they still scare me, being the 3-loss team. They're still a good team. They still have a lot of talent. When Indiana plays teams with a lot of talent, you can kind of tell. Even Penn State, who had a down year, that was a tougher game because I think the talent divide is a little better this year because they brought in even better recruits and transfers, but yeah, I'm excited. Now, Clay had an interesting take. He's a Michigan fan, and he's not exactly long for having Sharon Moore in the mix here, but I think everybody would probably trade for Signetti. I mean, he's taken a program that was basically the most losing program in the history of college football and made them the number one team in 2 years and turned around everybody. But you were talking about how you'd even maybe take another new Big Ten coach over Moore. I'm curious how many you would take over Sharon here in the Big Ten.
Ooh, right now there's probably quite a bit. I think Sharon. The tough thing with Sharon is I think he did meet expectations for year 2. If you told me 9-3 going into the season, I think I'd say that's a pretty decent year for him. The issue is they were very non-competitive in their losses to USC, Oklahoma, and Ohio State, and just even their wins, they kind of didn't necessarily look amazing in a lot of their games. But yeah, I mean, there's Signetti, there's Day, there's I'd probably take a Matt Campbell. I'd take Pat Fitzgerald. I think Pat Fitzgerald's awesome. I think. Bielema, I take Lincoln Riley. There's a lot of coaches in the Big Ten. I think Sharon's probably in the 9 or 10 range in terms of coaches that I would rank in the Big Ten. So there's a decent amount that I would take over him for sure.
Well, there is something too. If they had to go into the open market and get a coach, that the people that they would be interviewing would have better resumes than Sharon Moore when he started. I know as an internal hire, but I feel like they could probably get somebody on the open market. I don't know who that is, and I'm not saying they're going to go replace him right now, but yeah, I'm still amazed. That's the big thing for me, Jeff, is hiring Signetti the way that they did. I'm just surprised nobody got him before Indy. I know that's like easy to say now that they're this good, but with how well he did at James Madison, laying the groundwork there, and now they're in the college football playoff, his former team with his former protege that's now leaving and going to UCLA, and maybe one of those guys that Clay would take over Michigan. It's just wild that nobody else jumped on that guy.
It is. It really is. I think the biggest question was, can he do this consistently every year with NIL and spending money? I mean, with Indiana, do they have the money to get these transfers in the portal to get these guys? You can pay him $7, $8, $9, $1 million a year. So it'll be interesting. What he's done in the first 2 years is it's changed everything. Michigan State's coach got fired because of all these coaches are getting fired in 1 or 2 years because they want Signetti results. It's crazy. It really is.
It's a very high bar. One of my buddies from IU sent me something today that said that basically we were the most losing program in 150 years here at Indiana, and that maybe we just didn't realize that we were supposed to spend money before Signetti got there. It is a party school. I mean, that's I got in, so that's a pretty low bar. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to follow them, and it's a fun story for the Big Ten, like you said. And we can unite with Indiana over the Ohio States and the Alabamas and the power programs of the world. So I'm excited to follow their journey here.
If you think about it, I mean, what have the last 5, even the last decade, it's been SEC. The last 2 national championships have been from the Big Ten. And now Indiana, if they win the championship, that's even if Ohio State wins. We don't want Ohio State to win just because they're the team from the South. But if Indiana, that's 3 years in a row, 3 different Big Ten teams. Are you kidding me?
That would be wild. And just that storyline, like you said, to then have that comparison of, well, look what Signetti did in 2 years at Indiana. The other side story there too is Trinidad Chambliss, a local star at Ole Miss. I'm excited to see him. I'm hoping they do well, especially in the post Lane Kiffin era here. But yeah, good stuff. I'm excited to follow the college football playoff here. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with Clay in studio and talk some memorabilia here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Basically, both kind of came into the business. Encore's more of a third-party logistics company, but we came into the business around the same time. And both of us have a memorabilia background. Those that listen to the show may know that I wrote a book called An Introduction to Sports Memorabilia. And Clay has been doing sports memorabilia for a very long time, since he was a kid, basically. He just had some cards graded from his childhood, sending things in, but I wanted to talk some memorabilia because I don't do it probably enough on the show. That was the initial premise of kind of having the show, and wanted to talk some memorabilia. So I thought Clay would be a good one to do that, and Jeff will maybe jump in with questions and things he has to add. But why don't we start there? So you basically been doing this since you were a kid, collecting sports cards here. It had to be a very young age. Did your dad get you started on it? I don't know.
Yeah. So I believe in like the early 90s, late 80s, maybe, my dad, he would sell sports cards at shows and out of his car and such. And I've been going to card shows in the Grand Rapids area since I was a kid, going to card shops, getting cards for Christmas. As you alluded to, I sent some cards in recently for authentication. In middle school, I used to send cards out to different athletes to try to get autographs and for them to send it back. So got like Pavel Datsyuk, Dirk Nowitzki, Desmond Howard, Peyton Manning, some pretty high profile guys, autographs for free just as a 13-year-old, just sending it to them. So I've been in it my whole life. I love sports, love collecting. And it's a fun hobby for me.
And people still do that. Because they used to have the old books where they have everybody's address and mail something to them. And I mean, I've talked to some athletes that basically they enjoy doing that. They might not be a marquee. A lot of those names that you brought up, those are marquee names. Those are big names that are getting autograph and interview requests for that matter, but autograph requests from they probably work through an agency. They're also getting a ton of requests through the mail on anywhere they go on the street. But then there's guys that they're not really recognizable. They were the backup third baseman for the Orioles in the 70s or whatever, and they're just happy to. I remember getting an autograph at one of the shows, and the guy was. I said, "Hey, yeah, thanks," and I had a nice conversation with him. He's like, "I'm glad you wanted it." Like he was just happy that he could sign for somebody. And so that's there's a whole array there. But then you kind of turned that into more of there's the collecting side and then there's the dealing side. Oftentimes that line is kind of gray because people then just amass a lot of items and they say, oh, okay, maybe I'll kind of spread the wealth and end up selling things. And so you kind of now you've turned going into those shows into an interesting kind of buying and selling strategy that I think is worth talking about, because you basically go to the shows, try to find low value or high value, low cost cards in kind of the value boxes, and then try to repurpose them a little bit. Started that more as a side hustle in the last maybe 10 years or so. I've been going to shows looking. I collect Tigers and Michigan and Pistons and such, but my main purpose of going to shows is digging through the value boxes. I love going through, seeing if I can find an autograph of a guy for $2 that I can sell for $15 or something like that. Actually at this last show I found a Trajan Langdon autograph for $1, and I'll probably hold on to that one, but if I wanted to sell, I could probably sell for $15 or $20. So it's fun to dig through, seeing what other people are selling, kind of see what the value of those products are, and seeing if I can make some side money on it and enjoy it while I do it. He even found a Ryan Walsh card, Jeff.
Really?
It was
outstanding.
It wasn't me. It would have been lower value if it was me. It was a lacrosse player. It wasn't.
If I send that to you, will you autograph it for me?
I'll autograph it, but the value will go down. That's the only problem with
Down
it.
from zero.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be negative. But I
got a question.
Go
for
ahead.
Clay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
How hard is it to find? I collect vinyl records.
Okay.
And it's hard. You go to record shows, and I do the same thing you do. You want to look for an album for low.
Yeah.
I keep them because I collect them. So right now, how hard is it at record shows? Is it a lot like at card shows? Is it like record shows where it's almost impossible to find?
Yeah, I think at the level I do it at, it's not too difficult. There's a lot of dealers. There's a lot of money in the industry right now. So a lot of people are walking around. They've got just a case of cards, and that case alone, not even the cards, that case is $250. And they're walking around trying to buy a card for $300 and sell it for $320 or $350. For me, I'm digging in the cheap stuff. So a lot of dealers, it's not worth their time to sell a $5 card. So they'll sell it for 50 cents or they'll sell it for $1. Then I get to make that difference right there. So I like my sweet spot of the low value cards just because it's easy for me to find stuff, but there's so much money that the higher level seems to get a lot of action, but the low value stuff kind of lingers a little bit, and that's kind of my sweet spot for that stuff.
It is hard to find those bands because it probably is a little bit of a bell curve right now, because you've got the low end stuff that Clay's talking about, that it's easy to get those margins and say, if you can identify cards like Clay's good at, he can look at them on the fly, kind of like you probably can with records, Jeff, where you pull a card and you go, oh, well, this is signed. This is obviously worth, $15, or it's a jersey card or whatever. And then once you get in kind of that mid range, then you've got players that are more recognizable, newer, and that people are actually looking for. And then the high end, there is a lot of money. There's a lot of investment money going in there, but it still is probably goes down because the number of players go down. You don't have that many people that are saying, hey, I'm willing to spend 4 digits, 5 digits, whatever on a card. You're losing those people that had that sweet spot of like the hundreds, because I would think I'd get your opinion on this, Clay. I'd like your opinion. I would think it'd be in that like hundreds range, that there's a lot of people kind of dealing in that range. That's kind of the top of the curve where everybody is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the main sweet spot. But I am surprised all the time at some of the high value sales that happen on a regular basis. I was just doing a little bit of research, and there's so much money from just high dollar figures here in the U.S. and especially internationally. There's been a boom in the last 5 years or so. But like I saw in August, there was a Michael Penix Jr. autograph card that went for like $54,000. And most recently in November, there was a Tom Brady card that went for over $600,000. So it's interesting to see all that money from people that have money and coming from overseas, kind of pouring into the sports card market at a high profile, high dollar value.
And that parallels I'm more on the game used side of things. That's what I normally dealt in, was the jerseys and different items that they would use in the games. And it was the same kind of thing when you had the newer players were inherently overvalued. There was no way that they would be able to reach that value. Whereas a vintage, I think it's still probably this way with vintage cards, where there's a lot of money flowing in for the a Penix 1-of-1 rookie. Yeah. Obviously Brady's going to be very collectible, but they're probably leaving by the wayside some of the old cards where we're not making any more of those. The value is going to go nowhere but up because the supply is going down, and the player, this is what I always try to tell people, the player can't really affect their value anymore. No offense to Babe Ruth, I'll use him since we were talking about him earlier. Unless you time travel, we're not going to see Babe Ruth anymore. He's gone, and there's probably not a lot new that's going to come out about him that's going to ruin his reputation. So the lore is just going to go up as he's compared to Shohei Ohtani, as his records come up again and again. His value is going to continue to go up, but people are putting more money in some of these new cards where it's like you'd have to be Shohei Ohtani. You'd have to be the next Babe Ruth to really get the value there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the $54,000 or whatever that Penix card sold for, whoever purchased that card could have gotten, 15 Patrick Mahomes rookie autograph cards, and Mahomes is well on his way to becoming one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So,
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Isn't
the when people try to project the potential of the younger players, I just feel like there's so much more value in the established guys that have been there, that have won the MVPs, that have won the Super Bowls, and everyone's, by projecting, they're trying to hit on a 1 in a million guy, and that value significantly increasing, when in reality that card is probably most likely going to go down in most cases.
Yeah, you basically have to have a Mahomes and an Ohtani level career, and they're constantly going to make more cards. No, they won't make more they'll probably make more one of ones, but they won't have a one of one rookie of Michael Penix, but they're going to make a lot more cards of his, and that's going to inherently lower the value. Even though it's one of one, it's going to just lower the value, because people are going to go, well, I could spend $50,000 on this card, or I could get a nice Penix autograph that is numbered out of 10,000 and spend a lot less money, and you still effectively have the same value to a lot of people that aren't investing and stuff in it, because it's the same card. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a comparison with records, Jeff, because it's almost like people ignoring the vintage vinyl stuff that you're getting, and then being like, hey, I'm going to invest in MP3s. I'm going to go, this MP3 is really going to hit. It's one of one. It's a one of one MP3.
Well, the thing is, too, is cassettes. Cassettes are back.
Oh, yeah.
And there's even CDs are back. But a lot of people thought because they're redoing the old albums, when they're doing the Beatles, all these classic albums, all the collectors thought, well, the value of these older ones, the original, are going to go down, and they haven't. They really haven't. If you've got the original, they still hold their value, even with these new box sets and all this stuff, especially with the Beatles stuff that is constantly coming out.
Well, it's the same concept to a degree, because especially in good condition and all of that, both the outside cover and then the internal record, that the amount is decreasing by the day, month, year of valuable rare pieces. It's going down if it's from the 60s. Whereas some of the new music is being made, they're reissuing some records that obviously they're not making any cassettes and CDs, which is why those are going up too, because this is something maybe we'll come back with. But I want to get your answer before the break, but I'll come back with Clay after the break, because it's similar. It's why the eras have changed of what's invested in on the sports side, because it's who has money. It's it's like Clay's age group now has a different nostalgia than my age group, because I'm 13 years older than him. It's the same with the CDs and the cassettes. People that had those growing up now have some money to work with.
Right. Yep. And it's amazing. The younger kids too. Like I owned a record store a few years back, and the amount of 18 to 22-year-olds that would come in, they're going to college, that had a turntable and wanted the physical copy, wanted the albums, was incredible. It really is, to see these young kids. And like you said, now the kids that are in the 30s and their 40s that have money are going back and collecting those, and it just keeps the value of those albums.
It's the same reason people are trying to track down Furbies too. I think that's the same.
Are Furbies back again?
I don't know if they're back, but things like that. But it is funny to see these things kind of go up and down in value. But I do want to talk about that with Clay, and then we'll talk about Encore Business Group and how they can help you with your items, because there's a lot of people that don't necessarily know the value of what they have. It may be items in their basement or things that are taking up space, but Encore can help you get value and repurpose those to somebody that will value it, like Clay does with his collection. So we'll take a quick break and come back with the conversation about memorabilia here. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Like I said, we work together on this at Encore Business Group, and one thing that I've found, I was thinking about this when we were talking about kind of the value and finding things. I think it was called the Black Swamp Find, and it was Jeff, you'll like this. It was about 100 or so cards from the 1909 T206 issue, which was where the Honus Wagner card came from. His value came from the fact that he had his card pulled, so that one wasn't in there. But they were in pristine condition. They had been taken from like a great aunt that worked at the factory. Took 100 or so cards from the factory. They weren't really worth anything at that time. She wrapped a piece of twine around them and then placed them in basically like a wooden box, and then put them in her attic. And then the house got passed down from family member to family member. And then in the last few years here, people, COVID hit, people were looking through their attic, and they found this box and said, well, these are old cards. We got to see what the value is. They took them to an auction company, one that we actually work with, Heritage, one of the larger auction houses, and those cards netted them over $10 million because they were in such pristine condition. They were grading at just phenomenal. They were like in near perfect condition because she had basically done it perfectly. I'm sure Aunt Maud or whoever it was wasn't planning on having this for her kids. Maybe she had the foresight, but she basically made it perfect and preserved that. So you just never know what you're going to find. Kind of like some of these old records and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing where you can find some of this stuff. It really is. Like, you'll find stuff that I see it online all the time, and a lot of the times I'll question it because I'm like, really? Oh, I went to the store and here's this $150 album. I'm like, yeah. So, but to hear those stories like that, and like an Elvis movie's coming out again, another concert movie. Like, they just found all 54 hours of concert footage, like in some salt mine, and I'm like, where? They just keep finding all this stuff. It's just incredible.
I know, it's amazing. We make a bunch of new stuff, but it's amazing when they uncover old stuff. But yeah, that's why Clay's here, because there are people that contact us and say, hey, what do we do with this stuff? Because they don't necessarily want to deal with it themselves, and it's nice to get it to a home of somebody that will actually value it. So Encore Business Group has a solution for that, because we have a consignment program that Clay runs for us, and I'll have him take you through it here.
Yeah, so at Encore, we offer consignment for sports memorabilia. So we've had multiple collections come in, and what we'll do is we'll value the collection. We'll do our research and find out. We'll tell you the value of what we think your items are, whether it's, if you have game used baseballs, or if you have cards that you want to get sold or graded or whatever. We can provide insight as to value and kind of what we would do with them for you. And then at that point, you can decide, hey, I want to go through with this, and we can list them on our eBay page. Our eBay page has a large following. We've got almost 8,000 in sales on our eBay page, and then we have plenty of just overall experience in the eBay world. Between Ryan and myself, we have a lot of years added up in experience. So, we try to get the best value that we can out of your item, and we can do that at any point for you.
And the key is, we've seen this a lot being at the different shows and stuff. I think the key is finding somebody that you can trust to sell and help you sell, because a lot of people are at these shows looking for the margins. They're looking to buy that record, that card for $5 and sell it for 5,000, in their store. That's not our goal at all. We have a passion for the industry. Clay told you about his background. I've talked about my background, and we just like helping people. So that's kind of how this all started. And even our next guest, Dave Dalton, who will be coming on to cover the Pistons, he actually ended up becoming a customer just because I mentioned it on the show, and he's been a happy customer, and he's sold a bunch of things through us here.
Yeah, he was pretty thrilled. A few months back, we sold one of our better, cooler items. It was pretty cool to see when Dave stopped in. He brought a Michael Jordan Fleer rookie card, and it was a PSA 9, which is an incredible grade for that card. And when we sold it for him, it was actually, I think it was in the top 3 eBay sales in the last year, if I remember.
I think it was the top one at the time.
Yeah, it might have been the top at the time.
Yeah.
So that market's actually gone up a little bit, crept up, but that was just really cool to see, and just to hold it. It didn't feel like I should be holding a card that big, but that was fun to to have. And yeah, Dave was super thrilled with that. And we love, I personally love, as a sports geek, sports nerd, sports collector, I love seeing some of that older stuff come through. We've had some Larry Bird. It was a Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Julius Erving rookie card came through. Ted Williams signed baseball. We've got Mickey Mantle signed baseball. Just all kinds of cool stuff that people trust Encore to consign. And yeah, we just try to get the best value and the best service for the customers that trust us to consign.
And it's not a margin game for us. We're looking more to company things. That's why we do it as a consignment and stuff. So yeah, if you are interested in that, where should we send them here?
Yeah, great question. So you can visit www.encorebusinessgroup.com, or you can visit our Facebook page, Encore Business Group. We often post about our items that we have for sale, and our other various services as well. And you can contact us on the website or on the Facebook page.
And it's probably good to highlight the other services too. We had Josh in who handles that side of the business more, but it's a full service third party logistics company, and there's a lot of projects. You probably have this too, Clay. There's a lot of projects that we can assist with, but it's hard to kind of describe our services, because when people ask us about our business, they'll say, I'll explain it, and they'll say, oh, so you manufacture things, and I'll say, no. Oh, so you ship things. And no, we work with shipping partners like UPS and USPS. Oh, so you're handling. It's like, yeah, close enough. Yeah. Close enough. But I don't know how you would describe that to people.
Yeah, so basically that package that gets to your doorstep has to get there somewhere, somehow. So what we do is we offer fulfillment services for various companies. We can ship directly to customers. So if you have a product, if your brand's looking to kind of offload the physical inventory management, we can get that packed up, ship it with one of our partnered carriers like a UPS, FedEx, or USPS, or we can send your product into Amazon or Walmart. So that prime delivery, where you're getting it in -2 hours after you order something, it shows up at your porch before you even knew you were going to order it. That's the stuff we send into Amazon, and then they kind of handle that delivery. So yeah, we have prep and fulfillment services, and then, as we've talked about, the consignment services as well.
Check out the website. Clay gave you that information. I also want him to give out his eBay store, because he does a lot of searching for these cards and stuff, and he runs a pretty successful eBay store on his own. So in case you want to check out some of his finds, he'll give you the information on that here.
Yeah. So my eBay store is KGS Worldwide. That's KGS Worldwide. And then the store that we use as Encore is Murdoch 109. So be sure to look for that. That's on our Encore Business Group Facebook page. I'll put a link in there later tonight for you to find that.
And it'll be shared through Jethro and stuff here, because being the host, but also having this as my business, Jeff, I probably haven't really talked about it a lot, because I wanted to make sure not to talk about it more than any of the other sponsors. And then I realized it was the only sponsor of the show that we hadn't really talked about yet. So I feel like it was time, but I'm glad to have you in. I want to talk more about the vinyl records at some point too, because that's an interesting subject matter. We'll have to talk about that more, because I might
have to make it a 3-hour show.
Yeah,
you get going, I can't shut up.
But that's what's fun about these hobbies, whether it's records, sports cards, memorabilia, whatever it is. There's a lot of passion in it. People that are outside it may not understand, well, why do you want this old record? You can just go to Spotify and get and listen to it on online. Or why do you want a cutout of a picture of some athlete and him to doodle on it and draw on it? But it's more than that. It's a connection to the music. It's a connection to the sport. It's a way to feel connected to a hobby and to a passion. And so it's fun that there are ways to be connected to that, because I don't know what happened with you during COVID, Jeff, but like that was where the sports card and collectible industry really really blew up because we didn't have sports. You could watch Korean baseball or something, but other than that, you couldn't really watch anything because we had to shut down sports. It's kind of the same. We couldn't go to concerts during that time.
Right,
So
right.
I think that was one of the times that the records kind of bounced back up. They've had kind of up and down, and then went up at some point here, and then they've continued to go up.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's been almost 15 years now since vinyl records just keep going up. They outsold CDs and physical all the online sales and all that, the downloads. Vinyl records again last year outsold all of them. It's just amazing, and I love it. I'm so glad because, my ex-wife, I'd drive her nuts with the records, and she's like, "You just got to stop." And then they became popular, and she's like, "Oh, great." And I'm like, "Yep, sorry." And it's back, and it's like it's just a dream come true. And it's same with the cards. I remember collecting cards as a kid until I put them in my bicycle spokes so it make the great noise driving down. But riding my bike down the street. But yes, we collected as kids, and there was nothing better than going through those folders and looking at all the cards and everything. Unfortunately, I got rid of all mine. So,
and that's what happens with them, and then the value goes up, and that's what happened with the records and all this stuff. Rarity then breeds value later on. So it's fun stuff. I'm glad we could have a conversation about it. Be sure to check out Encore Business Group if you need any help with any of those items. And Clay's going to stay in studio because the aforementioned Dave Dalton is of the Pistons Fanatic podcast is going to come on, a friend of the show, and we're going to talk some Pistons with him here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Haven't had a chance to get him on lately and wanted to get him on. He's been going to a lot of the games. He's been scouting the games here. So we've got the Pistons Fanatic, Dave Dalton. How's it going, Dave?
It's going great. Our guys are rolling. They've been struggling a little bit the last 7 or 8 games, but they're still winning more than they're losing. And we're still number 1 in the East, so all's well.
Well, that last bit still has looked pretty good. I mean, they've got a scuffle at some point in time, but I want to start off with a question of the day here because it was going to be brownies. I've been to dinner with you, Dave. I'm not convinced you eat anything because when we went to dinner, you didn't eat anything and you're very straight laced, no drinking, no eating. So we can't do a food with you. But it's also National Travel to Whatever Time You Want Day. So I'm curious what era you would want to travel to. I got to think it's maybe Pistons related.
Well, yeah, if it was Pistons, obviously I would want to go back and watch the Bad Boys play. But yeah, I love basketball. Since Jerry West and Pistol Pete were my first 2 heroes in basketball. But then I love the Bad Boys, so that would be where I would go.
Yeah, that was a classic era. Dave, maybe you can help us on this because I was trying to talk about this, I think, with Eric Vincent, about we need a nickname for this era. We had the Bad Boys for the one era, obviously, and then Going to Work Group, which I wasn't ever a huge fan of that. I don't know how you felt about that one, but we need to brainstorm here. We got Clay in here too. I feel like he might be able to help us with this. He's a good idea guy, but
yeah, I talked to Clay already about it.
Okay, so, you got to.
The team has kind of adopted, and they call themselves the Nasty Dogs or Nasty Boys. So I even have a T-shirt. Somebody's supposed to be helping me design it. Clay wants one, but I was going to put like the old Bad Boy where it said Detroit, and then it had the orange basketball, and then it had the skull and crossbones in the middle, and then it said Detroit Bad Boys. And so I wanted to make one that says Detroit, and the big orange ball with a dog, a mean-looking dog with the net in its mouth, and so the Nasty Dogs. That's what Dennis Jenkins and some of those guys, they call themselves the Nasty Dogs.
Well,
they're always saying we're dogs, and even JB said they were nasty. So,
well, and in this current this year, they have one of the alternate jerseys is supposed to be basically an ode to that color scheme too, so that would be good tying into that. You guys didn't tell me about that, Clay. You're going to get one of those shirts here. You're in on this.
Yeah, I need one.
Yeah, if I get them, the person I thought they said they were in the process of getting them done soon, but I haven't heard anything back from them. But anyway, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and they do have everybody in the league, around the league, acknowledges the fact that we're one team that really has an identity, and we know who we are, and we play up to that identity, we play into that, and it's consistent throughout JB brings that edge, and so do all of our players. So it's really cool.
Well, Dave, you're a former coach, and I feel like when we talk with you about basketball, it's always kind of from that coach's perspective, because you talked about how obviously they started out very strong, had that long win streak that kind of mirrored the losing streak from a couple years ago, but then you kind of like a good coach focused on the most recent time frame of like, hey, well, we could be doing a little bit better here. What do you see as the change there? Because that's actually when they got healthier. That was one of the things I was marveling at during the streak, is those lineups that they were putting out there during that win streak were very injury prone.
From the coach's perspective, it's really hard to be JB, because when you're a coach and you go to work with those guys every day and you watch them fight and you watch all those bench guys help you win, and then they earn minutes, and then you want to reward them, but it's impossible. I think that is I think what you were getting at is that, to your point, is that there's not the flow and the consistency, because we're trying to play too many guys. So you can't play guys, they're playing 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, and there's not a rhythm, or they don't really get working together. So I really think that the rotation needs to be like 9 guys, and maybe 9.5. But then there's going to be guys, and I love B-ball Paul, and he doesn't even get to play most of the time. But I love the fact that Tobias was hurt last game, and so Stu started, and so then when they had to rotate a sub in, then Paul Reed got to play, and so I just love he earns minutes. Last year he did, and I don't think JB's trusts him or is a fan of his for some reason. It's hard to say, because he plays so well every time out. Plays 14 minutes, shoots 5 for 9, and gets 8 rebounds or 10 rebounds, and blocks a shot or two, and gets a steal, and he just relentlessly goes after offensive rebounds, not just once, but he'll go after the offensive rebound, and then he'll go after it again and tip it, and then maybe tip it out to somebody. It's amazing that he's so good, and he still never hardly gets to play over 13 minutes.
Well, that's the question I would have. Then I understand the argument, but if you're cutting down to 9-ish guys, then you're having to cut down some guys that have been kind of significantly involved. Do you have the kind of 9 guys that in mind of what you would do if you were coaching?
Yeah, well, so what has to happen if you're going to do that is Stu has to play the power forward, and play the 4 and play with Duran in order for B-ball Paul to get to play. So that's what I would do. And the last game, Javonte Green was amazing. I was at that game Saturday when they played the Bucks, and in the second half, Green just was out of this world. But I think you shouldn't play him. He's the kind of player every coach loves, because he's tough. He plays as hard as he can, but it's just, you just can't play everybody. That's the point. But so my point is about Paul Reed, though, is that if you play Stu and Duran enough minutes together, then there's a room for Paul Reed to play. That's what I would do.
Interesting. Yeah, it's tough because those guys you mentioned, Green, and obviously Dennis Jenkins has been a big story. Sasser hasn't even really been on the team until recently. You've got a lot of depth here throughout the system. Plus, we just talked to Chad Bush of the Motor City Cruise. There's guys kind of looming there that in other years maybe could be looked at, but obviously now they have the reverse issue of a lot of depth. But it seems like it'd be tough to cut it down to 9 guys, especially because
it's impossible, and that's the problem, though. And then we, like I said, then we have no rhythm and things, and we've turned it over. Teams have really clamped down on Duran. They've really loaded up on him as soon as he brings the ball down, and so they just got 2 guys just going after the ball, and so he's not been as dominant. So that's one of the problems. Obviously, Cade is he had, during that 13-game winning streak, he turned the ball over hardly at all, and then now he's been turning it over more, and I just get so frustrated. You guys, Cade's shot is flat. His 3-point shot is flat, and it hardly gets over the rim. If you watch games closely, the threes that he makes are almost always when they're highly contested, where he has to shoot it like at the end of the shot clock, or somebody's on him and he's shooting a step back. Because when they're on him, he has to shoot it. He arcs it up. He has to lift his arm up and shoot it higher, and the arc of the ball is higher. And I mean, the stats back it up. He's like in the bottom 2% in the NBA in open threes. He's worse on open threes than he is on contested threes. But that's a big problem, and it hurt us again that when and I'm not always a big fan of Duncan Robinson, and he, when those teams started playing zone against us, so that's a problem too. Teams are playing zone against us more, and people are game planning for Duran more. Cade's not shooting the three more, and everybody's not quite in sync because we're trying to play too many guys. So those are I think what the problem has been like the last 8 games. Why, even though we win, we don't look quite as good.
Dave, this is Clay here. I guess George Blaha would call you probably Smooth Davy or Special D. I got a question here for you. With the Pistons having so much depth, they go in the double digits of rotation. Do you think the Pistons are due for an upgrade? Like, is this a championship year? Is this part of the championship window for the
really
Pistons?
Hard. That's a great question, but it's really hard to try to make a trade. That's what you're saying, to try to consolidate. Since we have so much depth, that you would think we would be able to consolidate and then get a better player. And then, but the problem is that nobody's going to want those guys that are our bench guys. We're not going to be able to trade a bunch of bench guys to get a player like we need to make the big moves. So if we were to get, like Trey Murphy the third, or to get Marketing or one of those guys that's going to take, they're going to want some of our frontline players. They're going to want a star in Holland and Ivy, and then they're going to want 3 first-round draft picks. And so that's the challenge there. And so, I don't know who we would get. We really need a 4 that can shoot the 3. And so I on my last podcast, I mentioned about, Michael Porter Jr., and I've never been a big fan of his, but he's been lighting it up this year, and he can shoot this. He's 6'10", and he rebounds the heck out of the ball, but he can shoot it over anybody. He's got a fast release, and he can get it up high, and he's just. I think that if they could get him, but I think he might be available for a lot less. That we wouldn't have to trade 3 first rounds for him, and we would have to trade Holland or somebody, but I don't think that Trajan's going to want to trade Holland, because that was his only real draft pick that he made other than Chaz Lanier. So it's going to be interesting what happens, and I know Trajan's really patient, and we do want to kind of see all these guys. I think Asar's really not even hit his stride yet. I mean, he played better before he got injured, but I think he has still a lot of room. And I'm still not convinced how consistent Holland's going to be. I love him. I love the energy. I love the effort. And, sometimes he makes a great play and then he makes a bonehead play. But we'll see. I think they're going to be err on the side of being patient, though, and not make a move. So I don't know how they're going to keep all those guys happy.
That's the big thing there, because it's nice to have depth. It's nice to have some value in these different pieces. But, then you're going to have guys that aren't happy with their role because they saw, well, wait a minute, Dan Jenkins was used to playing for the Crews last year, and then now he's shown that he can be a contributor on the NBA level. And where does that leave him if he's back in the back end of the rotation like he was a game or two ago? So that's an interesting part about the consolidation. I want to come back with that piece. So we'll return here with Dave Dalton, the Pistons fanatic. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
From the Scully Statewide Moving Studios.
Country with a twist. Jethro FM. 1530 AM. WYGR Wyoming Grand Rapids. 94.9 FM Grand Rapids. 99.5 FM Lowell. And Jethro South. 980 AM WAKV Otsego Plainwell. 98.9 FM Otsego. And 105.1 FM Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at Jethro.fm.
There is something too. If you're,
Yeah, it's challenging to figure out what to do, and we'll see. I mean, the trade deadline that people say that a lot of more players come available on December 15th, but the trade deadline isn't. I don't know exactly when that date is, but yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. But like Danis, those guys deserve to play, but Danis had a couple really bad games. And my big thing though, going forward, that I'm most excited to see and hope happens is Jaden Ivey. I mean, I'm a big believer in Jaden Ivey, and he's been playing like 15 minutes or less in games, and then when he does play, he plays like 4 minutes, and then comes out and plays 4 more minutes. And he's had some really good games. He's had a couple not so good games, but he's had, the last game I think he had like 15 points and made 3 out of 3 threes, and I think he could make a huge difference because he's not even got to roll. I mean, he's such a freak athlete, and we could put a lineup out there that can really make things happen, I think.
That's where the consolidation, I think, can really work for him, because a lot of these trades, the Ivy has been in the trade in a lot of these projected trades, and his value isn't very good right now coming off the injury. I think the league still values him overall, which they should. He's a great player, as you're saying, but he doesn't look. He looks like he should right now because he's coming off of the multiple injuries, and he looks a little. I don't know if rusty's the right word, but he's playing back into it. He hasn't had a camp. He hasn't been able to get his sea legs, so to speak, and he's with guys that are in mid-season form here, or close to mid-season, early season form.
He hasn't played an NBA game in almost a year.
Exactly. So even for a young guy, he's going to have to get back into it. But then it's, hey, do you consolidate? I'm surprised the one that usually we're kind of interested in the same types of players. I'm surprised to hear you interested in Porter because I don't know if he's a great fit with this team as far as he is from the three standpoint, the shooting and all that.
Team, but the fact that we could use a 6'10" guy that can shoot the lights out. I mean, he's a 40% 3-point shooter on high volume, even contested ones. And we got a bunch of guys that can't even shoot it, when they're wide open. They just let them be open. And so he does rebound. He's, like I said, he's 6'10", but when he got traded, he said a bunch of really goofy things in social media and things. I'm not sure that I want him. And I never really was a fan of his when he was in Denver, but I'm just saying that's what we need, a guy that has his, skills and his size. Trey Murphy III would be my pick for sure, but he's only making like $25 million a year, and he's signed I think for 4 more years, and he can shoot the three, and he's a better defensive player. He rebounds, he passes, but I don't think the only way we could get him, I think the chance would be because Troy Weaver is in New Orleans, and he drafted Jaden Ivey, and so I don't know if that would ever happen. I really seriously don't think that they would trade him. They would want so much for him, and same with Danny Ainge. Always, he's been known legendary for winning every trade, so he's going to want just a boatload and a half for Markkanen, but they should trade him. They should trade Markkanen and get as much as they can. That can turn a whole franchise around, the load that you could get for him. So we'll see.
I understand the argument, certainly from a trade standpoint, but when we're talking about kind of the nasty dogs culture and everything, I don't know if Porter, with the change and the fact that he's got a lot more usage and that's why he's looking better.
That's for sure, that's true. But I think he would, you look how open, like Tobias had a good game shooting the three, but he's inconsistent. He's a low-volume 3-point shooter. He usually averages like 3 a game. He's never shot that great in his whole career. But the looks he gets right now, he's wide open on threes. And if Porter got those, and I don't think that we would. And I'm not, I was not a fan of Porter, and I don't think they would ever trade for him. But I'm just saying that if we try to get Markkanen or Murphy, and that's the kind of player that we really need, we would have to give up so much to get them. They would want Sarr, which I don't think we would ever trade him, and they would want like 3 first rounds probably at least. I mean, you look at some of these trades that what Orlando had to give up to get Bain. Was that 4 firsts, I think?
Yeah,
and,
I believe so.
And then the Knicks gave up 5 firsts to get Bridges, and which I don't think that would happen anymore. They overpaid, but I still think that we don't want to at this point, go all in. I think we're still better off. I think next year, this next off season is when we would want to make the move. And of course, the thing about trades is you got to have somebody that wants something you want, and have something, and they have to have something that you have that they want, and so that's always complicated. But if the right trade fell in their lap, I would make a trade at the trade deadline. But I just don't see that happening. There's just not that many those wings, those tall wings that are 6'8" or taller that can shoot the three. That's everybody wants those because there's not enough of them to go around.
Yeah, I actually think this year's a great year to start that kind of championship window, especially because you look at last year, the Eastern Conference representative in the NBA Finals, they're almost in dead last in the East because Halliburton's out. You got the Celtics, they're in third right now, but they're just not who they were last year. Tatum's out for the season.
Tatum might come back.
He could come back.
I wouldn't be shocked if he came back, but yeah.
But I think if there is a year for the Pistons, I think it could be this year because next year you never know how guys come back from injury and such. But next year you would expect Halliburton and Tatum to be 100%, and as we saw last year, those guys really mean a lot to the team that they're on.
And then you can never tell. I mean, then we got to start paying guys, and so Cade's on the max contract, and now we're going to have to pay Duran 10 or 12 more million than we would have had to pay him if we would have
right.
given him a contract this summer. Which wasn't opposed to them waiting to see what he was like, but now if he continues to play like he's played so far, I mean, he's got a very good chance of being an all-star. And if you're an all-star, you're going to be making $45 million a year. And then you have Ivy that you have to pay, and then you have Asar coming up, and then you have Holland, and then I don't even know how many more years left Stu has on his contract. So that I agree with you that when you think that we have all these, that the future is so bright, we got all these young guys, but it's just like all these teams, it ends up coming back that they don't necessarily have enough money to keep all of them.
There's a point where the music kind of stops. It's like you're playing musical chairs and the music stops, and then those are the guys that you have. I feel like Golden State is a good example of this because then they've tried to trade a couple of those pieces that they kind of got stuck with, and they move like a D'Angelo Russell and end up with an Andrew Wiggins, and then they got Durant in the mix, but then that didn't work. But thankfully they've got some good pieces to be proverbially stuck with the fact that they've got, like you said, Cade, Duran's playing very well. I know both you guys are high on Thompson, and I think that's kind of the next piece of this. He's also a guy that's been affected by injury, but we just need him to, I think, have kind of his natural growth here because he's shown a lot, and as he gets more comfortable, I mean, he can kind of do whatever he wants out there. It's just when he figures out what he wants, I think he's going to be better when he plays with a little bit of a head of steam, not quite a Ron Holland head of steam, something like one notch down from that, because as you said, Dave, he can get kind of singularly focused there. But yeah, if you can make one consolidation move that helps get you that big piece that fits in with the team, I feel like Bain was kind of that kind of move for Orlando. We'll see how it works out, but he's been good for them, and he was a good culture fit. I think he probably would have been a good fit for the Pistons, but that would have been an expensive price for them to pay. But something like
that's
that.
Okay. But
what's that?
He was a jerk against the Pistons.
Oh yeah, there's some bad blood there.
And then a couple of days ago, he's playing in a game, and like he takes the ball and he just drills OG Anunoby in the face. Like he just drills. He didn't even have to do it. And I mean, I heard a lot of people in the NBA think that if that would have happened years ago, there would have been a fight. Well, if he would have chucked to that Stu like that, there would have been a fight. But yeah, and he's a good player, and he tore the Pistons up when they beat us on the 28th. He took the ball to the basket. He's supposed to be a 3-point shooter. He's 0 for 5 on threes, and he scored like 38 points on drives, and he falls down and gets calls every time. And so But yeah, that is the kind that was a smart trade by them. I thought for sure they were going to be like the top 3 team in the East. It's fascinating. I mean, look how Cleveland is just struggling, and like you said, the East is open. So this is a great year. If you're ever going to try, you never know what's going to happen from year to year. Though it is wild, to see the Pistons go from 14 wins to 44, and then now we're first place in the East, and it's just everything. Anything can happen in the league. All these teams you see where you think a team's going to be all set. 4 years ago, I thought the Grizzlies were going to be just a powerhouse, and they thought they were going to be one of the top teams for a while, and they just, people get injured, and then you get a guy that acts not very smart like John Morant, and then things kind of unravel.
That's the big thing here, like Clay was talking about. It's the window and getting into this window, because that's what Orlando was trying to do, and some of the other teams are trying to seize this window, but you never know how things are going to shift. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow them here as the season goes on. They're certainly off to a great start. Be sure to tell us where to view the podcast here, Dave, so that people can follow your coverage.
Yeah, it's just on YouTube, and it's the Piston Fanatic Podcast. But yeah, we're young. The trend is right now everybody's playing faster, and younger players are winning games. You see the Clippers, they're dying, and it's just we got the young team. We got, like you said, we have great depth, and we'll see. But it's fun. You just got to enjoy it. I mean, I was just a fan since Dave being a Boblin year, and there were a lot of crappy years that were no fun to watch, and so. You can get all worked up about it when we lose 2 in a row and we look bad and we lose to the Bucks and they're terrible, and but we're blessed to have this group that we have there, and to have people like Kate and Asar and Duran. Those are great guys that work hard and are fun to watch.
Definitely. They're prone to do big things here, hopefully, maybe even this year. So we'll be following them, and we'll have you back on the show at some point here, Coach, but we appreciate you joining the show.
I enjoy it, and I really appreciate you, Clay and Ryan. Thank you.
See you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Dave Dalton. We appreciate him joining us. We also appreciate Clay joining us. He's got to head out here, but we appreciate him sitting in, having some sports talk here. Like I said, he's a big sports fan and telling us about the memorabilia. And I think you may have put out that post, but just wanted to have you plug that one more time here.
Yeah, I did. Yep. So go to Facebook. Our page name is Encore Business Group, and there you'll be able to see the latest post. It's got the link to our eBay store. Check us out. We got all kinds of sports memorabilia, miscellaneous consignments, a lot of winter boots right now. So if you're looking for a Christmas gift for a family member, be sure to check us out.
Definitely. We're here to help, and appreciate you joining us here in studio here, Clay, and talking some sports with us and memorabilia.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely. Appreciate talking about Encore Business Group. So be sure to tune in to those links and pages if you need any of their help. And we're going to turn our attention to hockey after the break. Michael Whitaker of the Hockey News is going to join us and talk about the Red Wings here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We'd try to request that on Jeff's show, but I don't think that fits in with the dynamic. I want to talk to him about that later. He's getting Michael on the line, but I want to talk to him about that later because there was a good conversation about the records, and I'm curious about some of the random requests he's gotten on his show, because I feel like since I'm into more of the metal type thing, I don't know if people are trying to throw him curveballs here, because one of the times that Jeff's on, I want to have the question be what song you would request from Jeff. I think that would be an interesting conversation to have with people. But I like this time travel one. That's an interesting theory, interesting thing to kind of think about where you would want to go, especially in the context of sports. We're a sports radio show, and there's a lot of infamous things. Clay was talking about Babe Ruth. You could have been there for the first event, the first Olympics, the first, the variety of events. And so it would be interesting to see all those. I've been lucky enough to see the 3 of the Detroit teams in their respective championships live and in person, the Red Wings, the Pistons, and the Tigers. Unfortunately, the Lions have not been to a championship in my lifetime, so hopefully that will change, and I'll be able to add them with the Super Bowl here. But I was able to see the Red Wings in a Stanley Cup. They lost that particular game, but we're hoping they can eventually get back there. But got to follow the coverage of some of the guys on the beat here, like Michael Whitaker of the Hockey News. We're happy to have him on. Haven't had him on before, but he does great work for the Hockey News, and he's been on the beat for a while, and want to get his takes. But Michael, we always celebrate the thing of the day, so I'm curious. It's National Time Travel to whenever you would want to day, and I'm curious what era or what event you would time travel to if you were given the option here. Would you go and see the old Red Wings? What would you do here?
Honestly, to me, I would probably go back to the legendary 0102 team. I'm sure you remember, but there was really quite nothing like it. So many Hall of Famers, so many just legendary figures of the game that were all on the same team, coached by Scotty Bowman. It really seems like we're never going to see something like that again. It was truly a time to be a Red Wings fan.
That's a good answer. I do remember that team fairly well. That was kind of in my sweet spot of watching them growing up. That I thought you might want to go back to like the old days, like the Gordie Howe days, to see Gordie Howe, see Ted Lindsay, because that would have been interesting to see that brand of hockey, especially because that was kind of similar in how many stars they had back in that era. Although the game was very different back then. We've actually had Phil Esposito on the show, and he talked about that era, and it's just funny to see the differences between where they're at now, and then talk to Phil about how he basically had to do everything but drive the Zamboni in between periods to run to do basically have the team stay up and running. He had to lace boots up for people, lace skates up. He had to do everything in the course of his career, and he's one of the top hockey players of all time. So it would have been interesting to watch that era, I think.
Yeah, it certainly would have been. I'm not sure if you saw it, but I actually recently did a exclusive interview with Paul Woods, who was a Red Wings captain. Actually, at one time in his career, he started playing in the late 1970s. I think Phil Esposito probably was still playing at that time. Did a whole range of topics with him, going from how he was selected in the Red Wings waiver draft in '77. He got to play in the last couple of seasons at Olympia Stadium before the move over to Joe Louis Arena. Obviously, that was still kind of in the dead Wings era, if you will, but he was part of the team that first started playing at Joe Louis, and it was certainly a different era of hockey back then. He had some pretty tremendous insight into everything that went into the game, and of course, had his work now as a color commentator. He's actually the longest serving color commentator in Detroit sports history. So it was pretty cool sitting down with him and getting some of his insight from that era of hockey.
I did see that article. That was a good one. I didn't realize that until you said that in the article. I was at an event actually with him. He took part in the Polish Sports Hall of Fame festivities that I was at last year, and him and Ken Cal were both there, and yeah, it was interesting listening to both of those guys, and that's a lot of history there, because not only did they have the history of him playing and being part of that era, but now he's basically been part of every era since, kind of like a Mickey Redmond, who people are familiar with if they watch it on the TV side, who's from the same era. That there's a wealth of knowledge there, and it's fun to listen to those guys, because the game has changed immensely, kind of like we talked about with Esposito. It's changed immensely since that time, so it's got to be interesting to see it through his eyes and be able to do a long form interview with him like that.
Yeah, it certainly was. Both him and Mickey have been doing color commentary for the Red Wings. I know that Mickey started with the Red Wings, then he went to Hockey Night in Canada for a couple of years, and then I think he's been back with the Red Wings since the mid-1980s, I think it has been. And I think that was right around the same year that Paul Wood started as a color commentator, give or take a year or two. But yeah, they both started right around the same time in the mid to later 1980s as color commentators for the Red Wings, and they've certainly seen it all here in the last several decades.
That's one of the underrated things I think about the market as a whole, the Detroit market, because we talk a lot about the teams, and as a whole, the teams are playing pretty well right now, and obviously it's a good fan base. The word grit gets thrown around a lot, and they're interesting, hardworking, blue-collar teams that kind of emulate the city as a whole. But one thing that I find interesting, talking about all these different sports with different writers like yourself and different pundits and athletes in the different sports, is that we are kind of spoiled on the commentary side of things. I think in all these sports, the Red Wings have two very long lasting pairs, like you were talking about with Paul Woods and Ken Cal, and then Daniels and Redmond on the TV side. But these guys have been in the market forever, and they're very knowledgeable, they're entertaining, and that's true kind of across the sports, I think, to a degree. Obviously the Lions are a little different because they've got the NFL does it differently, and they don't have local broadcasters, but on the radio side they do, and that's been pretty consistent. The Tigers had Hartwell, and then Dickerson, and now Benetti is doing very well there. The Pistons have had George Blaha, who just went into the Hall of Fame. So there's value to having long-lasting commentators like that. Jeff, you hit your mic here. You've been listening to these guys forever here.
Yes, I have. Grew up listening to the radio. All three teams, Lions, mostly Red Wings and Tigers, though. Growing up with Ernie Harwell, and absolutely, I would gladly. In fact, I was always trying to teach my son, to listen on the radio and just use your imagination to see what's going on the ice or on the baseball diamond. It was, and he just, once TV and social media just kind of took over, he kind of lost that interest. But yeah, growing up and listening on the radio was always first for me.
There's something classic about being able to listen to it on the radio and listen to have them have to describe everything, because it's still viable nowadays, and there's something to that because the descriptions are different. Even when you listen to like a Dickerson, who did a lot of TV this year, he's different when he's on the radio versus on the TV, because he has to be. And Michael, I think that's probably one of the reasons the interview was so good with Paul, because these guys have so much knowledge. They have to have knowledge of every facet of the game to be able to talk about it night in and night out like they do.
Well, I think that's certainly one of the positive aspects of having somebody who actually played the game as a commentator, maybe not somebody who necessarily, kind of grew up with that career aptitude of, I want to be a broadcaster or something, but obviously they have their own kind of unique view to bring to things, because obviously they've been on the ice before, even if it was in a completely different era. They have the experience and knowledge that, so few people in the world have, of having played in the NHL, and they can bring their own special and unique perspectives to everything, and kind of explain things maybe to maybe novice fans who maybe not know quite as much. They'll be able to give their spin on things, having actually played the game. And so I think that's actually one of the cool things of having guys like the Paul Woods and Mickey Redmonds. And obviously around the NHL, we have so many former players who have kind of gotten into the same thing. And so they certainly bring a unique perspective.
Especially when they transition to the commentating side fairly quickly after their careers, because then they're inherently keeping up with all the changes. Sure, he played in a different era, but they've seen all of the different eras, of which there's been many forms, and Redmond still goes down and sees it at the ice level here for the TV broadcast. So yeah, I'm glad you got to do that piece. That's pretty cool. That I didn't expect to talk about that one that much, but that was a fun segment to be able to highlight that. We'll talk about the modern day Wings and how they're doing, and talk about some of Michael's coverage here after the break. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. I'm curious about your thoughts on the team after covering them, because we do cover all of the Detroit teams across the board, the primary four major league teams, and the Red Wings kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, it seems like, a little bit on kind of the primary coverage market. But I think they're a very interesting team. The more now that we've been covering them every week for the show, they seem like they're on the precipice of something bigger potentially. There's some guys that are playing pretty well. They've got young guys in the fold that have made their impact this year. That they've had some kind of low key free agent acquisitions. One in particular that's playing pretty well right now, and those guys have played above probably their contract value coming in, most of the free agents. But I'm curious, kind of some of your general thoughts about the team, seeing them up until this point, because this is a very crowded playoff picture. Obviously, we're a ways away from the playoffs, but it's going to be crowded, and people are going to be beating each other up all year. So I'm curious your thoughts on the Red Wings so far, and what they can kind of do to get over the hump here. Oh, you there, Michael? I don't know if we lost him. Jeff's gonna figure that out. I think we may have lost him. Maybe he just wanted to do the one segment here. He wanted to talk about Paul Woods, and then he got off. We might have lost him here, but that's okay. I do think this is an interesting team because they have a lot of pieces. And it's interesting to get people's takes every week because we try to bring on different pundits for all of these sports. And they do have a lot of pieces. It feels like everybody feels like they're not quite there, obviously because of the record and because of the fact that they need to shore up some of the pieces in their game, the transition, the defense. But I do feel like they're building for the future. I think we have Michael back on. Are you on, Michael? Are you there? Do we have you, Michael? Nope. I don't know if we have him. We're having technical difficulties. I think he might have actually time traveled. I think he might have actually gone back to 2001 and we lost him. So I don't know. See, this is what happens with time travel. You have the butterfly effect that happens. And now that Michael went back to 2001, now we don't know what happens. Now the present day has changed. Now there's all sorts of things that have changed. But do we have you on here, Michael?
Hey there. Yeah, sorry about that. I can hear you now. I think may have been a problem with my connection or something like that. So
no problem. We were worried you left us to go back and watch it since we were.
No, I'm not hearing anything.
You can't hear anything? Jeff's trying to figure things out here. If you can hear me, jump back in. We're going to do if you can hear me now, the Verizon ads here. Are you there, Michael?
Hi there. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I think I must have some kind of a connection issue here. So hopefully that I don't disappear again like that.
Usually, I don't have the problem where people can't hear my voice. That is not a complaint that I get very often.
Me neither.
so it's kind of refreshing to have it once in a while. But I don't know what you heard of the intro to that question, but I'm just curious to get your take here on the team so far, because I do feel like they have a lot of pieces, and it's been an interesting team to cover, but obviously they're kind of in the middle of the pack here. It's going to be a competitive season, it seems, in the bracket to make it to the playoffs. And I'm curious what you've seen so far and what's stuck out to you in your coverage and what they kind of need to do to break away from the pack here.
Obviously, the biggest problem for them so far is their the defensive and goaltending issues. Right now, they're pretty fortunate that their record, they're, I believe, only 1 or 2 points out of the top spot in the Atlantic Division. Had they played adequate defense in several games recently, I'm thinking like the loss to the Nashville Predators. Games like that, I mean, they could easily be in first place right now. So it's very good to see some of the usual suspects are continuing to, play at such a high level. You got guys like the Alex DeBrincats, Dylan Larkins, Lucas Raymonds continuing to do their thing. Patrick Kane is continuing to put up points, even though he wasn't necessarily scoring up until recently, but he is producing at almost a point per game pace. We have, James Van Riemsdyk is starting to heat up after kind of a slower start. And then obviously you have so many of the rookie players who have stepped in and made made an impact. Obviously, you got Emmett Finney, who scored in the most recent game against the Kraken. Nate Danielson, and both him and Axel Sandin-Pellikka are still kind of finding their bearings at the NHL level, which is to be expected for most rookies. And I guess some nights you don't really know what team you're going to get. You can get the team that looks like the one that rattled off 5 straight wins earlier in the season and looked like they're really on their way. And then other nights when they drop games against opponents that they just should not be losing to, it kind of reminds me and certainly other people about kind of the way they were playing last season before the coaching change was made. And so it really is a matter of finding consistency. It's something that Todd McClellan has repeatedly talked about game management, and he directly challenged them after their loss on opening night to Montreal, basically asking, like, are we tired of this yet? And they certainly responded well. That was that 5-game winning streak, but then some of those problems have started to creep back in. But overall, like I said, they're in a good position right now. The Atlantic Division is so tight because there's only a couple of points difference between the different spots in the division. There, only a swinger of 2 or 3 points can be the difference between 3rd and 5th place. And so right now, let's hope that the Red Wings are able to kind of find a consistent defensive footing. And, as long as the top producers continue, I think there is a good chance that they could potentially end their playoff streak or the playoff drought this season. We'll have to see what happens from this point.
I think that's one reason I'm hopeful about this team, because you highlighted some of the players that they've added, and really there weren't a lot of subtractions from last year. They had to send a couple guys down to the Griffins to make things work, but then they pulled up some of those young guys that you're talking about, and a lot of the new. Sorry guys,
I think I'm losing you again here.
I'm not sure we can hear you well. So yeah, I think it's on your side. Can you hear me? We might we might have to reconnect with Michael at a later time here. I think he's having a tough time hearing us, but I'm going to continue with what I was saying there. I think it's interesting. I think that's one of the reasons I find this team so interesting is they have a lot of new pieces, and they have the new coach at the basically mid-year last year. They were a moving franchise, they had moving pieces the entire year last year, and now things are solidified. They got the coaches kind of locked in. They've had McClellan's had an opportunity to have his coaches installed, have an off season with the team, have a camp with the team. Then you don't lose much, and you add in a lot of young guys and a lot of new guys. I think a lot of this is just getting a feel for being on the ice at the same time, where the guys align on the actual lines, and then you've got the natural inherent improvement that people are hopefully going to make as the year goes on. Casper hasn't found his footing this year. You got to think that Gibson's going to settle in a little bit more. You got these young guys that should be getting better as the season goes on. Some of the guys he mentioned, and Finney and Danielson hasn't played much, Sandin-Pellikka. So I feel like they have the most margin for potential improvement out of a lot of these teams in the NHL, because I've been trying to figure out, Jeff, we talk to Red Wings folks every week, and it seems like their excitement is more tempered than mine. I think that's why I'm excited, because you've seen this in different sports franchises over the years. If you have primarily an older team, then you got to worry about attrition as the year goes on. You got to worry about the higher risk of injury. You got to worry about maybe they've got too many minutes on their legs, too much playing time. Whereas if you have young guys, they're learning things every game. They're in more and more situations, and this is a younger, newer team. Between the young guys that they have on the team and the free agents, they have the force change that can potentially multiply and go a little bit exponential instead of linear as the season goes on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the division is so competitive, you don't have the time to get these young kids up to speed. They're like, let's go. The inconsistency it's so frustrating, especially for fans, And Iserman's under so much pressure, and his time is up. It's like, let's go. You've been here long enough. This team needs to do it, and you wonder is it the coach? Is it? I mean, the goalie would look great. He looks great one night, and then again, like Michael said earlier, they're losing to teams they just shouldn't lose to.
They have a penchant for playing close games. You got to
like
take
everyone.
Yeah, you got to have your blood pressure be pretty steady during these games, because it's like they score a goal and within 5 minutes they're giving up a goal. I don't know if it's something with the transition defense or what have you, but it's just an interesting team to watch, and I'm hoping between the coaching staff being able to get more hands on this team and get a better handle, and the young guys kind of the multiplication factor, I'm hoping they can improve here a little bit. But yeah, we'll get Michael back on at some point in time. Didn't work out with him this time. We got a few takes from him, and then we'll have more Red Wings coverage throughout the season. But we'll take a quick break here, and then Jeff and I will regroup and finish out the final segment on our own here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel, and I was trying to think. Obviously, we were planning on talking a little bit more hockey with Michael, but since we lost him, we were having an interesting conversation in studio here before it started, because Jeff obviously is more on the music side of Jethro, but he likes the sports. He's been crossing over and producing some of the sports shows. And on the Shane Graham show on Thursday, we were talking about how Shane was talking about we had a good conversation about kind of inspirational stories in sports, and Shane was talking about living in his car, and it's a great story. I want to do more long form interviews with athletes like him in the off season. That's one of the goals of that show, of Shane Graham's Extra Points, for me, where we can talk to some of his colleagues and some of the people that I know and talk about their stories, because we just see them at the top. We don't see the climb. And I think it's important to see the climb. But one of the things that he talked about was maybe wanting to take calls and talk to people about their stories and try to give them inspiration and give them advice. And it was an interesting concept, but you do a request show. I've always been a little bit hesitant to take calls, especially in a sports show. It's a little different to say, hey, I want you to play Devil Went Down to Georgia. That's what I would request, by the way, if I was calling into your show. I know it was a bumper for our show, but I'm not a huge country guy, as you can tell by the heavy metal bumpers that we have. But I always like that one. But it's a little different to take callers, because you never know really what you're going to get from that. But I'm curious, because we were talking about kind of the different sports radio shows in the area, and now there's been a local change to sports radio where we're getting the Detroit shows here locally. And so I'm curious to get your take on that, as somebody that does takes requests, has taken callers. That kind of changes the show format here. We haven't ventured into that on either of my shows here so far.
Yeah, I don't have a screen caller, so I don't put many calls on the air. I just take the requests off the air, but and there's just a reason why. Because it's very dangerous. And you've heard, if you listen to sports talk radio, you do hear guys that they should have screened, and there's other guys that are better than cutting off the phone calls and ending it, but no, I mean, I absolutely love it. I get great requests every single week. We seem to be getting more each week, and we've got our regulars that tune in every single week, and we get some fun requests. We get some different requests, but it is all requests Saturday night, and I can only think of, I know less than on my one hand of calls or songs that I haven't been able to play.
Oh.
So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's been very good.
That's why I brought that up, because I actually know of a person that their name is going to be redacted for Sports Intel here, that called into a local sports radio show that's not on our station, on a different station, and basically was one of those callers. He dropped some words that you're not supposed to say on the air, and then immediately got booted, had some not kind words for the host. Not that I really expect the clientele that listens to this show to be like that, because it's not inherently an argument-based show. It's more of a discussion. It's more highlighting the information and the interviewees that come on the show. But it's just an interesting concept. But I do like Shane's concept of trying to find, at least I think the bridge there is finding somewhat vetted folks that maybe have had some of these types of stories, because he was talking about Jake Bates coming from
absolutely.
He was a brick salesman. He said bricklayer, and then he was calling himself out. The fact that he remembered that he was a brick salesman is amazing to me, because he knows these guys well, and he's worked with both of the kickers for the Lions. He's worked with Bates and Fox, the punter. But it would be interesting to get their stories, because you don't really understand where these guys come from. You just see them at the top. Oh, they're getting paid X amount of dollars. Oh, they're on top of the world. But many of them share some type of story like that, because they weren't just born on third base, most of them, and then all of a sudden, hey, I'm a kicker in the NFL. Especially these kickers, they all have crazy stories.
Yeah, a brick salesman, and then we heard of him just because of the XFL. Right? He kicked a 63-yarder in the XFL, and that's really what got his name circulating around social media, because he hit it at Ford Field as well. So, yeah, Jake Bates would be a great start to start there and listen to more of his story.
I want to start with a lot of the kickers, because that's where a lot of Shane's connections are. And it's not because he's very good outside of that kicking box. I don't want to necessarily keep him in that box, but he's also basically one of the foremost pundits on kicking. You don't see a lot of guys. You got Jay Feely that's on some of the broadcasts, but you don't see a lot of guys like Shane that have the level of knowledge that he is. He's literally teaching young kickers and flying all over the country. That's why sometimes he phones in. He's flying all over the country to advise these young kickers that are trying to make it to the NFL. But the stories are crazy, because we talk about Bates, but in that, part of the reason we were talking about the stories is because Brandon Aubrey has a very similar story, and he's regarded by many as maybe the top kicker in the NFL, and he's virtually automatic for the Cowboys, even from 60. He lines up from 60, and you're like, this is good. We remember the old era with Jason Hansen and Eddie Murray before that. It's like that once you got beyond 50, you were nervous. Now these guys are getting beyond 60, and with some of them, you're like, no, he's got the leg for this. He's got this.
Yeah, and if you remember Jason Hansen, when he was 50 and beyond, it was every ounce of energy and whatever strength he had in his body to get it through. This Aubrey is insane. He makes it look so effortless. It's incredible. Even that 63-yarder was just like, that was the hardest I think I've seen him work on that 63. And he could have hit it for 10. I think he had 10 yards on it easily.
Well, that's a great point about the fact that, yeah, you were putting everything you had into it. You're almost falling over trying to kick it in the old days. And now, yeah, they're changing the angles of the balls. They have the different balls now. And Shane and I have talked about some of these improvements. But I think it'll be fun to spread out in the offseason and talk with some of these guys, talk about some of the stories, and talk about some of the improvements in kicking, because it's interesting. But yeah, we had a heck of a game. We haven't really talked about the Lions game here. We talked about it on Thursday, some while we were on air, and we're going to talk about it next Thursday on Extra Points here. But now they're still in it, and then thankfully with a lot of valuable NFC North games coming up, we've got a lot of the season still to be decided. Now the Packers have kind of emerged as with probably going to be the top of the division, although all these teams have a tough schedule on the way out. But they play the Bears one more time, and the Lions are close to controlling their own destiny since they have the Bears on the schedule, having beaten them already here.
Yeah, if we take care of our own business, we want Green Bay to beat Chicago again. And then I think if we can take care of our business, Green Bay beat Chicago, that final wild card game is going to be in Chicago. Detroit, I mean, that's going to be the game. Hopefully, I mean, that's what it could come down to. We do not want Chicago beating Green Bay. Earlier on we did, because I thought that tie with Green Bay with Dallas was going to come back and haunt them, but they're taking care of their business, and they're Chicago, I wasn't buying in until they beat Philadelphia, but that quarterback, he's just not good enough yet. He isn't. He's just too inconsistent.
It's tough to talk about Chicago to a degree because there's a lot of people that have strong opinions and they're somewhat emotional about Ben Johnson. And I don't have any emotional attachment to him. He was a great coordinator while he was here. He arguably stayed a year longer than he could and should have. I kind of thought he would take that Washington job, that they've had imbalanced years here between Jaden Daniels' first year and his second year with all the injuries that they had on the team. But I thought him with Jaden Daniels would have looked pretty good. He instead opted to wait a year, went with the first overall pick in that draft in Caleb Williams. But it's an odd pairing, those two. I think people were looking at them as, hey, you're getting a more mobile version of what could be a Jared Goff style quarterback. But there's a reason Jared Goff is Jared Goff, and I think he gets underrated for his ability to read the field and go through the progressions. We had Eric Kramer on the show. You remember Eric from his days with the Lions. Yep. We had him on the show earlier in the year, and we're going to have him back on to do some Bears-Lions analysis because he was very vocal. He's a very mild-mannered guy, especially with everything he's gone through post-career. And that's the most worked up I've ever heard him when he was talking about Caleb Williams, because he feels the same way. And this is a guy that played for both franchises and has watched Caleb through his whole career, because he still has the yardage record for the Bears. So Caleb could take that record this year, but he's been watching him more than anybody else here.
Yeah, if you watch a lot of the Bears or follow the Bears, the game is still too fast for him. It's way too fast. He still thinks he can do things that he could do in college. And you could see it on the sidelines. It infuriates Ben Johnson. And that whole Ben Johnson thing, I think that man does not lack any confidence, any. And he stayed another year to take that Chicago to beat all the other teams. Like he made that comment in the preseason when in his conference about beating Green Bay twice a year was fantastic. Can't wait to do it with Chicago. He doesn't lack any confidence, and he wanted to stay in division to beat Dan Campbell and beat Green Bay.
Exactly. And so that's why they're an interesting pair. I don't know really where that's going to go, but I'm hoping that does mean something at the end of the season, because that'll be fun to watch that Bears-Lions game with stakes. I think that's really where the season should end up. But it'll be fun to cover it here as the season goes on. But like you said, they got to take care of business. But appreciate you being here, Jeff. We'll look forward to you producing the show here more. Be sure to tune in to Jeff on Saturday nights for the All Request Show. It's a great show, and you can put in your requests there. Want to thank the other guests as well, Clay Kregel, Dave Dalton, and Michael Whitaker. We'll get him back on here. Want to thank our sponsors, Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall, Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Haglund of JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic. And be sure to tune in to the show next week here from 7 to 9, and then Extra Points and the Sports Project in between. Until then, stay informed and stay vigilant.
And one more thing.
Oh, go ahead,
Jethro's birthday. Happy birthday,
Happy
Jethro
birthday
FM.
to Jethro. Yeah, 7 years strong, right? We figured out. And so we're celebrating it in style. Scott Pasteur has led a great station, and we're excited for 7 more years, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Even more than that.
Absolutely.
So, but Rex has also texted me that make sure if you missed anything here, I know we had some technical difficulties and stuff. Be sure to follow the podcast, Instagram, Facebook, Sports Intel Ryan on most of those platforms. And then we also have got the social media going for the Shane Graham Extra Points show. So if you missed anything, that's a good way to catch us there.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.